All right, so for anyone that's tuning in early, we have our City of Meadow Lake Emergency Preparedness Week 2021 special guest presenters, Ann Danielson and Kathy Steves, and I think we're 1 minute away from showtime. If anyone that's watching, if you have questions, please just email them to me and we'll pass them on to our guest speakers, and hopefully they'll have a moment to answer, and if not, we'll try and get to the answers to you later. So I think it is just now 7 o'clock. So we're going to introduce Kathy Steves, who is the executive director of the Fort McMurray and Wood Buffalo United Way, and calls herself an experienced evacuee, which is an experience most of us have not had. So Kathy, I'm going to try and put you on the screen and you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Neil, and thanks for having me here, everybody. Oh, I think you need the second me on the, there you go. Okay,
All
I
right,
don't know
now we
why
can see
there's
you.
two, but as Neil was saying, two for the price of one. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Steves. As Neil said, I am the executive director of the United Way here at Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo. And before that, I was working for the RMWB, the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo, in emergency management. And my job was the Emergency Social Services Coordinator. Let me give you a little rundown of my experience as an evacuee, and it's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. In 2016, as you probably all know, Fort McMurray experienced the largest wildfire in Canadian history, and we evacuated 88,000 citizens from our city, which was quite an accomplishment. At that time, I was working for Shell as a safety trainer, and I was about 1 hour north of the city working at site. My son at the time was just turning 13 on the day of the fire, so welcome to teenagerhood. And my husband were both in town. Obviously, Mitchell was in school, and everything seemed normal that day. And I know you've heard stories, and I know you've read the newspapers, and you've heard about the 5-year anniversary of the fire, but it seems like every May here in Fort McMurray, we're all on the edge of our seats and on our last nerve as we are triggered by the mere smell of fire, and an orange sunset will get everybody triggered to the traumatic event that happened. If you could change the slide, please, Kayla. Maybe while she's getting that set up, I'll tell you a little bit more that everything seemed normal on that day of May 3rd, 2016. Nobody thought anything strange was about to happen until we got a call at about 1 p.m. Actually, it was a text message from my son, Mitchell, and Kaylee can go, there you go, that one. This was the scene that Mitchell could see from his classroom window. Now, those are not aliens floating in the photo or jellyfish. Those are just the reflections of the lights from inside his classroom. And what you can see outside there is a wall of fire. So not only did I get a text message that says, "Mom, I'm scared," the next text message that he sent said, "My phone is dying." So, I mean, it's a bit traumatic, a bit stressful, a bit nerve wracking. So now I literally hijacked a truck from Shell filled with fellow coworkers heading back to Fort McMurray. And Kayla, if you want to change the slide. The next slide, you'll see the golf course where my husband was golfing at the time. Right where you see that fire, there's a river. The fire actually jumped over the river at its widest point. And in about an hour, this golf course and what you see here on this slide was engulfed by fire and completely destroyed. Now, Paul was golfing that day. The RCMP came to the golf course to evacuate everybody, and they were told they have less than half an hour to get out. And we live just up the hill from this golf course. We walk to this golf course every day. So to hear that we have half an hour to pack everything that you think is valuable and get out, we went into this mode, this caveman brain mode of fight or flight, which I'll get into in a minute. Luckily, I don't know why, I had an emergency kit packed and it was in the garage. So I told Paul, pack the emergency kit and the pets, Those are the first things that go in. And then we were texting back and forth about getting the photo albums, getting the family treasures, and get everything off the kitchen counter. You know how you have bananas and oranges and a loaf of bread. And I said to just sweep all of that into the car, put it in the car, and get out. I was coming from the north. He was trying to get out of our neighborhood. I had to go and get Mitchell. And on the next slide, Kayla will show you the gridlock that was caused by the fire. We were going nowhere. The cars were stopped. And what was happening was that people were running out of gas along the side of the road. So they were pulling off onto the side. And the neighborhood up on the left-hand side of this slide was actually on fire. So people were running down over the bridge trying to get out of the fire. It was incredible. So what we saw happening was that people were not even able to get home to get those things that they needed. And many people panicked because they were caught unprepared. Sheer terror, they began, if you could get home, you were grabbing the weirdest things. We heard people rushing into their homes and grabbing hockey sticks, snow pants, a bag of cheesies, one lady grabbed, a collection of cologne. And one guy grabbed all of his wife's gala dresses, and that's what she had to wear for the next 72 hours. She looked really great, but it was not exactly the right things to have. On the next slide, Kayla, we'll see how incredibly quickly the fire engulfed the entire city of Fort McMurray. And under the red circle there, somewhere is where we lived. So we're thinking we have to hurry. We don't have much time. We have to grab what we can and get to safety. The questions that go through our minds as evacuees are, how long are we going to be evacuated? Because we can't see these aerial views, and the radio stations aren't being given all the latest and greatest information either. So how long are we going to be evacuated? Do we all have to evacuate? When do we go? How do we go? What routes do we go? These are all important questions that we ask ourselves. The most important answer that we got from radio, from anybody we could talk to on the phone, was simply to go, to get out and go. They were trying to evacuate by community. The ones that were most affected were being given access to evacuation routes first, which was great. But everybody still needed to get out, and some people were reluctant to leave. And we'll talk about that reluctance to leave when we get into the psychology of an evacuation. So Kayla, next slide, please. Here again, we see the gridlock. And it was hot, as you can imagine. I mean, this is an oven. We spent hours on the road exactly in these conditions, listening to the radio for news updates. I only had less than a quarter tank of gas in my car. I'll tell you, I never, ever after this leave the car on less than half a tank. Never. And our neighbors are the same. Everybody you talk to is like, yeah, we'll never park the car in the driveway, winter, summer, fall, spring, real spring, fake spring. We'll never leave the car at less than half a tank of gas. Because in Fort McMurray, you have to understand that we are 5 hours away from Edmonton. It's a long drive. I mean, even to get to Boyle or Wandering River is a 2-hour, 3-hour drive. You have to be ready. What we discovered we needed the most was a cell phone charger in the car, along with water and snacks. By the time we ended up back at Shell Albion Sands, after all of this, about 5 hours being on the road, trying to get back in gridlock, we were dying of thirst. It was hot and we were starving. And when you're hungry in an emergency, low blood sugar, plus the anxiety, the stress, and the fear is a really bad combination. So water, snacks is something important to think about, to have in your emergency kits. All right, next slide, please, Kayla. What I want to show you in this photo, this is my neighborhood. Right here at the far back left-hand corner, you can see those black roofs of the buildings. That's where I live. And those buildings did not burn. Interestingly enough, the fire came and engulfed that's the golf course on fire. It jumped around our buildings and got all the houses that you see in the front of this photo. What I want to show you here, everybody, is that this gets real. This happened to us. And you don't have a chance to go back and grab anything. They weren't letting us back to get our kits and get supplies. You're out. And this was actually taken after we had evacuated, obviously. But it's real. I don't want you to think that it'll never happen to you. We all thought that here in Fort McMurray. Oh, it'll never happen. The firemen will be able to control it if it comes towards us. Or it's something that you read about in another country, in another province, but never us. And I want you to know that it is real. The firemen were not able to control this fire. The firemen were not able to control the flood either that happened just last year. And evacuees had to get out, and there was significant damage. All right, next slide, please, Kayla. Okay, these are the three things that I want to talk to you about as an experienced evacuee. And these are some of the things I also learned afterwards about myself and about being a human in a tense and stressful situation. So I wrote some notes here. Three important things. The first one is the psychology of an emergency, how our brains work when they're overloaded with emergency information, adrenaline, and fear. And then in the center there, it's a community map. And we always have to think with the end in mind. And then I'm not trying to say the worst case scenario. I'm not trying to say that you think about what would happen if you were to die in an emergency. That's not it. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm trying to say is, where will you go? And work your way back. So where will you go to spend the next 24 hours? Do you have a friend, a neighbor in the city, outside the province? Do you have resources that could allow you to stay in a hotel or in a shelter for 72 hours until you can figure things out? And the last one is what to pack. Don't get caught packing snow pants, cheesies, and a cologne collection. That'll do you no good. All right, next slide, Kayla, please. All right, the psychology of emergency reactions is well studied, and especially after the fire, everybody was hooked up to the little, electrodes pretty much, and we were asked 1,000 questions about what we did, how we did it, and why. Really, when it comes down to it, it's human nature. Next slide, Kayla. It really comes down to fight or flight. And this goes back to being human. It goes back to when our brains are faced with an emergency, we actually regress to a prehistoric kind of brain, a Neanderthal brain. I'm not trying to say you're being dumb or you're not thinking. What I'm trying to say is our bodies and our brains go into self-defense mode. And I experienced this firsthand. For example, I was sitting on the deck one day and a spider, I have this huge fear of creepy spiders. A spider crawled over my foot. And to me, it was a tarantula, but it was probably just a little tiny spider, a spider. It had 8 legs, crawled over my foot. And what was my reaction? I screamed and I slapped it off. Now, that's not a normal reaction for Kathy Steves. This is prehistoric caveman brain taking over. Literally a caveman brain. You grunt, you move quickly. It's survival mode. What if that was a prehistoric spider, Tarantulosaurus, that crawled over some prehistoric caveman foot, right? It's survival. And my brain did that during the fire. I had to rescue my kid from school, and I had to run about 1.5 kilometers. Now, I am not in good shape. I am not a runner, but I ran like a marathoner up a hill, up an overpass, 1.5 kilometers to his school to rescue my kid. I was in Mama Bear prehistoric caveman mode. The contrast of that is I was so scared, I couldn't move. Exactly what's happening in your brain is that it shuts off all thinking and emotion and puts you into survival. Next slide, Kayla, please. This is a guy in a truck driving towards Mitchell and I. Mitchell's my boy, he was 13 at the time, on a sidewalk at breakneck speed. Mitchell, who's 13, is tiny, tiny, tiny for his age. He is not sporty whatsoever. And I'm walking with him on the sidewalk. It's raining ashes on us. The sky is orange. We're on a sidewalk. It's gridlock next to us. We're running, walking, trying to get this kid to safety is my priority. And I am not thinking. Mitchell, out of nowhere, pushes me off the sidewalk. I went flying and he came and flew right next to me. We fell on the hill. As this car, this truck, flew past. Caveman thinking, caveman mode. How did this little scrawny kid manage to push me off the sidewalk and he saved our lives? Caveman thinking. Next slide, Kayla. What I'm trying to get at here, everybody, is that in an emergency, our thinking brain shuts off. You don't remember what happened after the emergency. You do things you didn't think you were capable of doing. It's because of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex actually turn off, while the amygdala, the lower part of your brain, the prehistoric part of your brain, turns on the fight or flight reaction. It stores memories of the event. Basically, what I'm trying to say to you, next slide, Kayla, is that in an emergency, there is no time to think. Many people think that, they'll call an evacuation and I'll have time to go home and pack everything I need. I don't need to make a kit well in advance. That's wrong. That is incorrect thinking. In an emergency, you have time to fight or flight. That is it. Unless you're a trained paramedic. How many of you are trained paramedics? Put up your hand. How many of you are trained firefighters? How many of you are trained in Red Cross or Salvation Army, quick response teams? Okay, maybe some of you are putting up your hands now, but I'm not. And perhaps many of you are not. Many of you probably have kids or pets or are caring for a senior parent or a child with cognitive developmental delays. In an emergency, you don't have time. You don't have the training to respond quickly or clearly with your thinking brain on. So everybody, what I'm trying to say is you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. Next slide, please, Kayla. This slide is about knowing the hazards. Think now, today, tomorrow, about where you'd go if you have to evacuate. Could you go to a neighbor's house, a friend's house, a family, a hotel? Think about what time of day emergencies happen. Do you think they only happen during working hours? Many house fires happen at night after you've gone to bed. Floods happen, late afternoon once the heat of the day has caused the rivers to overflow. So think about that. If it's a citywide emergency, where can you go? What will you do? This is all part of your emergency planning. Think about your kit that you're going to make. Will you be able to evacuate by car, on foot, by plane, by boat? I've never been to Meadow Lake, to your neighborhood. It sounds lovely. I don't know what the hazards are, but you do need to know. In Fort McMurray, we knew that forest fires were a hazard and we knew that floods were a hazard. We're also waiting for Sharknado and the zombie apocalypse to happen here because everything else has already happened. We need to be ready for just about anything. And I think that's also just part of being Canadians. All right, Kayla, next slide, please. Okay, here's something you need to know. In just about every emergency prep kit list that you'll ever see, it says to pack things like, emergency candles and flashlights and sleeping bags and stoves and freeze-dried ice cream and bring a can opener and bring a roll of toilet paper and all of these things. And I don't know about you, but I don't like camping. I know that goes against everything Canadian, and I know that, but I don't like camping. And in an evacuation, camping is not my first thought, and it should not be for yours either. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in the first 24 to 72 hours, you are not thinking. And I know what you're thinking. Of course I am, Kathy. I'm thinking, I'm driving, and I've got my family, and I'm thinking about where we're going to go and how we're going to do it. In fact, studies have shown that you are still on the adrenaline curve. And when you're at the top of the adrenaline curve in an anxious and anxiety-filled situation, you're not thinking at your best. So don't think that you're going to remember how to start a fire, set up a tent, get supplies, do all of these things that campers do, unless you're an experienced camper. So don't go out and buy all these camping equipment things. Go with what you are familiar with and know the difference between evacuation and survival. And I know you're going to say, yeah, but Kathy, evacuation goes with survival. Yes, it does. But I'm not talking you're going into the jungle to survive here on one can of food and 2 squares of toilet paper. You're probably just driving to a friend's house. You're probably just driving to the nearby community, and there's a hotel there you're going to stay in. And so be practical and be realistic. You don't need to buy an urban assault vehicle, which is a minivan. If you hate camping, don't go out and buy all the camping supplies. Next slide, please, Kayla. What you do need to pack is consider how much you and the kids can carry. I'm going to tell you this story. During the evacuation with Fort McMurray, we all ended up at Shell Albion Sands in their main reception area. And there was a teenage girl there. And I apologize if you are the teenage girl listening to this presentation, but she evacuated with her mom, obviously, in the minivan. Her mom picked her up from the swimming pool. They did not have a chance to change. This poor teenage girl evacuated in a bathing suit and ended up at Shell Albion Sands in a bathing suit. The mother didn't bring a change of clothes for her. There was no emergency kit with a change of clothes for her. And the poor kid quickly was given a blanket. That's not comfortable. That kid is traumatized now because of that experience. Do you think you could save your kids from a traumatizing experience if you just pack them a decent change of clothes? Yes, you can. We saw people there with babies, toddlers, with nothing but the diaper they came with, not even a change bag. You can do yourself a lot of favors by packing things in advance and just having them in the car. There were pet owners with no leash, no crate, no food. Seniors showing up at the evacuation center with no medications, no walkers, no change of clothes. Caregivers with children with autism, teens with mental disabilities or all kinds of developmental issues with no familiar objects, no clothes, no nothing to support them in their well-being, their mental health. You can avoid all of these if you are carefully prepared. Next slide, please, Kayla. This is what you need. These 5, actually there's a 6th one. You need a towel. We evacuated with a dog towel. You know, that one that has paint on it and is all ripped up and looks terrible and is the ugliest towel that you can buy from the Salvation Army thrift store? Do yourself a favor and pack a nice towel for yourselves. When we got to Shell Albion Sands camp, they ran out of all of these things. Luckily, we had a dog towel packed, which we all shared. You need toiletries. I mean, prescription medications, toothbrush, toothpaste, hand lotion, eye drops, shampoo, conditioner, soap. Anything that makes you feel like a human being, you need to pack. A change of clothes. Okay, funny story. So I had to pack a change of clothes for my husband, Paul. And then he had gained a little bit of weight. And then the clothes that he had in the emergency bag were very, very tight. I thought he looked fine, but he felt very self-conscious, which didn't help his mental health. Okay, everybody. Mitchell had grown a foot by the time he had to put on these clothes. And again, he didn't really exactly feel great either. Make sure you pack the right clothes. Snacks. I'm not talking stuff that you have to boil in a bag and use a can opener. I'm talking granola bars, stuff that you can throw in that will survive an apocalypse in your bag, and lots and lots and lots of water. The last thing on this list that you need is a cell phone charger. You pack these things, that's all you need. That's it. Consider who you're packing for. On the next slide, Kayla, please. Consider who you're packing for. You're packing for a senior. Make sure you pack prescription medications, all the special things that they need. If you're packing for small children, pack an extra soother, pack a blankie, a doo-doo, like whatever you call it, your kid calls it, an extra teddy bear, diapers that fit. If you're packing for pets, pack a leash, dog food, a sample size dog food. You don't need to pack 72 hours worth of dog food. One 24-hour pack will do, because 100% chance you're going to find a store that sells some. And anybody that has special needs in your household, please consider who you're packing for. Next slide, Kayla, please. From experience, delays cause problems for everyone. If you're busy running around your house trying to think of what to pack because you're on your last 30 seconds to get out of your house, the trauma you're causing to your body, your brain, it takes so much longer to recover. There were people who were not evacuating because they couldn't find the leash for their pets, because they couldn't think to pack things for their babies, for their aging parent that lived with them. It caused delays. It put first responders in harm's way. It caused delays at the reception centers and group lodging facilities as well. So it's not just about you. It's also about your loved ones, the first responders, the volunteers that are there to help you at the reception center. If you come and you have your toiletries, that saves them from looking for them. If you come with a change of clothes, you don't have to go looking through the bins of clothes that they've collected to find the right size of sweatpants that fit you. You already have what you need. You're already way ahead of the game. Next slide, please, Kayla. Okay, the other day I was talking to my staff about be prepared, get an emergency kit. And if I could have shown you the eye rolls that I got, the double half pike twist eye rolls that I got when I said, you need to have a kit. Okay, Kathy, a kit, we need a kit. It takes less than 30 minutes to assemble a kit. And I know that you all spend hours and hours in the rabbit hole of Facebook videos. 30 minutes, my friends. And here's what you need to put it all together. Is it large Ziploc bags? Everybody gets a Ziploc bag with snacks. Everybody gets a Ziploc bag with toiletries. Everybody gets a Ziploc bags with socks, underwear, t-shirt. You're done. You need a black permanent marker to write everybody's name on the Ziploc bag. I tell you, when we arrived at Shell Albion Sands and we unzipped the bag, okay, Paul, Mitchell, Piper's the dog. Kathy, here's your bag, here's yours, here's yours. I was a superhero for my husband, for my son, and for the pets. While people around us were running and nervous and panicking, we had it down. You need a backpack with wide straps. Okay, Kayla, next slide, please. Okay, I think my next slide was supposed to be about a backpack. Hang on one second here. Kayla, stay where you are, but I recommend a backpack, everybody, and here's the reason why. Anything bigger than a backpack, you cannot carry it. Backpacks fit in the trunk of your car. They can be squeezed into smaller spaces. You can wear the backpack and carry a baby or a pet or something else in your hands. You can run with a backpack on. And when I say that, I almost want to cry because I know people that literally ran for their lives in the fire, carrying nothing but a backpack and a baby over a bridge as it burned behind them. But she had what she needed in a backpack. A backpack limits the weight. I've already talked about that. It also serves as a pillow in an evacuation center. You want to try and catch 5 minutes of sleep. You put your head on your backpack. It's also securing your backpack at the same time. When you carry your backpack, you don't accidentally put it down. Remember I talked about you stop thinking in an emergency? I can't tell you how many stray backpacks we picked up. Who does this belong to? Nobody knows. Because you put it down and you don't think, you walk away. Keep it on you. Something else about the backpack is that the weight of the backpack is comforting. You tighten the straps and you wear it tightly around your waist. There's something about that hug sensation that feels good. And also, if you had to, you could wear 2 backpacks, one on the front, one on the back, and still have your hands free to hold a child's hand, to hold a leash, to sign into a group lodging facility. And backpacks are small, it's easy to keep your eyes on, and it's much safer and more secure than trying to carry duffel bags with a crate, with a kid, with this. Keep it to a backpack. Keep it simple. The least amount of things you have to think about, the better. All right. I hope I'm not freaking everybody. I can't see your facial reactions. So I think you're all paying attention and just totally buying into what I'm saying. Now, you have a kit. Okay, Kathy, now what do I do with it? Where does it go? Next slide, Kayla. It can go in 3 places, and it totally depends on your family and your circumstances. So I work full time. Mitchell is now 18. He's responsible. I keep everything in the trunk of my car. It's a backpack. It takes up no room. Actually, I like having it there because it means less amount of space for Costco shopping, which is a savings in itself, okay? Is it going to go in the trunk of your car? Are you working out of the home? Is it going to go in your office under the desk? Is it going to go in your garage because you work from home or most of your family is at home during the day that they could quickly grab the backpacks and run? You need to think about this. Is it going to take you 6 hours to think about it? No. Put it somewhere, give it a try. You just have to try and think about it. Talk it through with your family. Next slide, please, Kayla. All right. Here's what you need to do. You need to think about what you're going to do. Think about the hazards, where you're going to go. Talk about it with your families. This is the week to do it. I talk about it with Mitchell all the time. Hey, Mitch, where's our emergency bag? In the garage. That's right. Make those kits, everybody. Spend 30 minutes of your life. It's COVID. You're not doing anything anyway, right? Do it. Put it together. Be done with it. Be proud of yourself and your family for doing it. And then practice it. Make it fun. Rehearse how you would get out of school, out of your office, out of your home in an emergency. Make it fun. Make sure your aging parents, your friends, your family are all comfortable with your plan. And you will feel like a superhero in an emergency. Last slide, Kayla. This is a photo of my Mitchie. On the left, you see him at 13 years old. This is us at camp. It was his birthday. What I was able to save for him was a single cupcake and 1 present from our house. This is him. He is exhausted. It's midnight. This is the size of the bed. It has to fit 3 people. You can see the guinea pig under the bed by his foot, and the dog is under there too. We are exhausted, but his teeth were brushed. We washed his face. He had a shower. He had clean clothes. He had a cupcake, and it was his birthday. And then on the 3rd of May, just like last week, it feels like, he turned 18 and here he is. He survived this. And the point of this is to show you that we were prepared. The trauma was a lot less for Mitchell than it was for some kids who didn't have the opportunity to be prepared, and they love to be ready. They love it. They love talking about it because it's real and it's a real topic that they can get into with you. Thank you, everybody. I know I talked way more than 10 minutes and I'm so sorry. I am so very passionate about this topic and I hope that it was useful and I hope that you make your kits. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kathy. That was fantastic. And I'd like to remind everybody watching, if you have questions for either of our speakers, please send it by email to firechief@meadowlake.ca and we'll make sure that you get answers. And I'm going to try to put Kathy's face on the screen here for just a moment. There we are. I think. All right. Kathy, thank you very much. I wonder, Anne, before we introduce you, do you have any questions or comments for Kathy? We'll get you unmuted there.
There we go. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Anne. Nice to meet you.
Yes, you as well. That was, wow, incredible experience. So insightful. Just awesome. I thought one thing that, well, a lot of things that you touched on, excellent advice, all of it. But I thought it was really interesting how you mentioned about where you're storing your kit.
Yeah.
That's something that hadn't crossed my mind before. So excellent advice. Just thank you so much.
That took a little bit of practice because I used to have them in the garage, and the whole plan was that we could, you know, quickly throw them into the car and go, until one day I was at work and Mitchell was at home, and there was a townhouse on fire in our townhouse complex, and the police had shut off all access to the townhouse area. I couldn't get in, and Mitchell was little. He couldn't carry out the dog, the 2 guinea pigs, and the emergency kit. So we were stuck.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it. Where do we want a kit?
Yeah,
and one in the car, one in the garage. It's a backpack. Yeah. Good question, Anne. Thank you.
All right. Well, Kathy, thank you so much. And we could talk about this for days and days. And I now that we've made your acquaintance, I think we'll be talking again.
I would love to.
But now I think we'll turn it over to Anne Danielson. Anne, we're delighted to have her with us tonight. Anne played a leading role in the formation of Meadow Lake's own emergency preparedness plan and organization, and work that is ongoing to this day. But Anne is a lot of fun and a wealth of knowledge. And Anne, I think you're sharing your screen now. So
okay, good.
Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Neil. So I thank you for having me tonight. I thought I'd give you just a little brief background about myself. So I've been able to enjoy a career in emergency management for the past over 10 years now. So some of the emergencies that I've been involved in, down here, the bottom right of the screen, this is a picture from the city of Brandon, Manitoba. And that was the 2011 floods. I worked in the reception center there. Just as this flood kind of started to become manageable, some of the other communities in Southwest Manitoba, which is where I lived at the time, were impacted with flooding. And I was actually the regional emergency coordinator for 11 towns and RMs. And so this picture above where it says Melita Motel is one of the towns that was affected. More recently, I was fortunate enough to be invited up as part of a team to assist last year with the ice jam and flooding in Fort McMurray, and helped out in their emergency coordination center. And then just a short couple months later, back with the same team in Lac La Biche to help with flooding as well. So this picture is, again, from Fort McMurray from the fires in 2016. I was not there. However, I did manage a reception center in St. Paul, Alberta that received some of the evacuees from there. And then this other picture over here is from Pelican Narrows. I still am a volunteer with the Red Cross. And so I went to Prince Albert, who was hosting those evacuees, and helped with arranging lodging for them. So in emergency management, we always say it's not a matter of if, but when a disaster happens. So some of the things that struck me out of those experiences, the first is home businesses. I have a home business myself. And I remember one particular evacuee in Brandon that I was helping, and he was particularly concerned because he had a home business and the supplies and inventory and stuff like that he had for his business, he kept in his basement, and he was really worried about it flooding. Large public businesses. A lot of the big box stores in Brandon were built in the floodplains, the Home Depots, the Walmarts, all of those big stores, car dealerships. And so there were a lot of stores that were very actually prepared. They had business continuity plans. There was a car dealership was able to get all of their vehicles and inventory out to a vacant parking lot they found that was in a safe area far away from the flood zone. But there were some other businesses that drug their feet a bit to evacuate, and I can only speculate that that's perhaps because they weren't as prepared and didn't have a plan. Pet care, kennels filled up fast in City Brandon, and they had to provide pet care for animals of folks that had to evacuate. Exotic animals is always another challenge. I haven't had to deal with it myself yet, but I know a lot of emergency management colleagues that have. So as I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking about how has my professional experience affected how I approach my personal emergency management preparedness in my own home. So when we're making a plan, we want to take stock. So I'm going to use my own household as an example here. So the first thing is, what have you got? Assess the hazards. Right now, I live in a small regional park. There's lots of trees around us, and we live near a lake. Some of the hazards that I see are potential for brush and wildfire. Like I said, there's lots of trees around us. Wind and severe summer and winter storms, potential power outages. I would say those are my top hazards. Certainly not all of them, but in my top. And those hazards are different than when I lived in the city just down the highway 20 minutes away. So the next thing on the list is identify tangible preparedness items. What do you have already? So in our household, besides the basic household kit and first aid kits, we have a backup source of heat. We've got a wood burning fireplace and of course fire extinguishers. We do have some generator power capacity, and we have a fire suppression sprinkler system around the outside of our house. The lake is close enough that it can be accessed to pump for fire suppression as well. And I keep important documents on flash drives, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we do have a plan to evacuate our house as well as to evacuate the park. There are different gates locked at different times around the park, and we know when which gates are locked. So depending on the season, our evacuation routes might change. And the next on that list is, what can you change? What can you take action and actually do? So again, using our house as an example, we cut and remove the dead trees around our property. We need to work on that a little bit more this right shortly here. We've had some more trees damaged over the winter, but that's something that we do every year. And cleaning up the floor of dried leaves that are around on our property. I live in close to Lloydminster, which is a bi-provincial location. So I'm signed up for emergency alerts on Sask Emergency Alert and Alberta Emergency Alert. And I know that Meadow Lake has an awesome local notification system, Voyant Alert, to sign up to. So if you're not signed up for that yet, do take the couple of seconds to go and do that. And then the last thing is, what do you need help with? I think all of us need help, and it's important to be honest about our emergency management plans and where there are gaps. So we had a near-miss medical emergency out here this past winter, and it got me thinking about, I would really love to have an AED out here at this park for year-round residents, but I'm going to have to look to my neighbors to see how we can implement procedure to access that AED and use it. And I want to make sure that my neighbors know that they can count on me to help them in an emergency. Lots of times, neighbors are the first to be able to be there and help before even first responders can arrive. So the stronger those relationships are, the more resilient we're going to be. So key items, as with the items in your emergency preparedness kit, like flashlights perhaps. Many of the items that I'm going to discuss, they're not just helpful in large disaster situations, but also in personal disaster situations like household, medical, or fire emergencies. So prepare yourself and your household members. Acquire and maintain skill sets, standard first aid, child and pet first aid, babysitter's course, Stay Safe. That's a program through Canadian Red Cross for youth that are at home alone, teaching them some of the hazards and how to deal with emergencies. Know how to shelter in place, and know the difference between different types of protective actions to take for different kinds of hazards in your area, and make sure you teach them and practice them within your household. So I mentioned shelter in place and emergency management. That's a term we use in hazardous material situations, where if we want to protect residents from potentially toxic air outside, we'll often tell them to take shelter in an upper level room, close all the doors and windows, turn off any air exchange units like bathroom and kitchen fans, dryers, that type of thing, and stay tuned to local radio until there's an all clear. Now, sometimes that term shelter in place is confused with the protective actions you should take in a tornado situation, which are actually different. In a tornado situation, we tell people to find the lowest point in their home, such as basement, and find an interior room to take shelter in. The next piece there, and as Kathy mentioned, have emergency contacts that you can stay with. We often tell people in emergency management, people that are going to be evacuated, stay with family and friends first. First of all, we can't guarantee the number of hotel rooms that might be available. Often those fill up quickly. And secondly, when we can't put people in hotels, or that's not an option for whatever reason, it's congregate shelters, which means you may be on a cot in a gymnasium with a bunch of other strangers. So I think for most of us, we can agree we'd be much more comfortable with family and friends. And make sure that we have emergency contact numbers memorized. I know I rely on this a whole lot, but I do have my emergency contact numbers memorized up here as well. And make sure, as Kathy mentioned too, that they're in different locations, because if there's a disaster that affects the entire city of Meadow Lake, where else can you stay? Make sure you have a way to evacuate. Do you have a vehicle that you can use to evacuate? Does your neighbor? Maybe your neighbor doesn't. Maybe you have room in your vehicle and you can help them. And as well, keep that vehicle fueled up. And make sure family members know your evacuation plan and your emergency contacts, because they're probably going to want to check on you if they hear on the news that there's been a disaster in your area. I'm always surprised at the number of people that don't have insurance. Whether you're a business owner, a homeowner, or a tenant renting, buy the insurance. The Provincial Disaster Assistance Program generally does not cover items for which insurance could have reasonably been purchased. So you're really flying without a safety net if you don't have insurance. And create a business continuity plan. So if you're not sure where to start with a business continuity plan, approach your Chamber of Commerce, ask them to bring in a workshop about it and provide information. So I have a quick little video here, and I hope that the sound is going to be okay. It's kind of funny, but it also emphasizes the importance of insurance.
I'm a bunch of wind, and just like your stomach after that strip mall sushi, well, I'm a bit unpredictable. Let's redecorate. What's the matter, Tanya? I thought you loved being spontaneous. And you got the wrong home insurance coverage, I might break the bank too. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Okay, so that was obviously an American insurance company, but again, just emphasizing the importance of having insurance. And make getting prepared easy. You don't have to go and purchase everything at once if you don't have the stuff to put in your kit. Make a point each month of purchasing one item or practicing one piece of your emergency management plan. Oops. So the next slide, pets. Pack a preparedness kit for your pets. I'm not going to go into all the items that you can put in there. There's lots of great lists online that can tell you how to do that. But I will mention that your kit should include a copy of any vaccines and special care instructions. So does your pet require specific medication or food? Do you have an exotic pet for which the general ways of caring for them maybe isn't typically known? For example, I think about things like snakes and lizards and that type of thing. They require special temperature controls. That's not something that everybody knows. So write down those care instructions. Have a place your pet can stay. Not unlike ourselves, pets probably are going to be more comfortable staying with trusted family and friends than in a large emergency pet shelter with other pets that they don't know. And think about the actual logistics of evacuating with your pet. Is your pet prepared? So for example, if you have pets that are in cages, aquariums, tanks, that type of thing, what's that going to look like trying to actually evacuate with those carriers, tanks, aquariums? Maybe you're not able to evacuate with them. In that case, write down those special care instructions and post them on the aquarium or tank in case you have to leave your pet behind. Another one I wanted to mention is cats. They can be a little skittish in emergencies. They often like to hide. And most cats aren't used to being toted around in pet carriers, so they tend to be afraid of them. So we might want to work with your animal ahead of time to make sure they're not scared of pet carriers and vehicles and things like that. The importance of important documents. I love flash drives. I like to keep them in a place where I can grab and go with them. I keep my various work projects on there, my photos and videos from when my kids were little, I keep them on there. But I also take advantage of cloud storage as well in case I'm not able to grab my stash of flash drives and go. Alternate storage locations. Sometimes when I go on vacation, I'll even leave a flash drive with very important information on it with a trusted family member as well, just in case something happens to my house while I'm gone. Something else that you can put on flash drives, besides photos and all of that good stuff, are copies of important records, health cards, identification, maybe that insurance policy. And that can help you more expeditiously access basic services in a disaster. So for example, maybe you forgot your prescription medication, maybe you need a medication refill. Hey, you have your health card already saved on a flash drive. That can really help the process for yourself and those helping you in an emergency. Know your neighbors, whether you're in town or you live rurally. They're part of your social network and you can help each other fill the gaps in your emergency plans. So for example, when I lived in Manitoba, tornado warnings happened very frequently during the summer. I had a neighbor across the street, they did not have a basement, and we just had an understanding that when there was a tornado warning, my door was unlocked and they could come right into my basement. And if I was going to be away for any amount of time, I would let them know. As I mentioned, neighbors are often first to help and be able to arrive before first responders can even get to you. And consider the people that show up to assist following a disaster. After there's been a storm, who helps you clean up? It's often your neighbors. Emergency managers build regional resiliency and increase access to resources through mutual aid with other municipalities. So after we've created a plan, we look and see where are the gaps. Maybe we don't have as many resources as we want and are able to have. Well, let's look to our neighboring municipality and pool those resources and share them in an emergency. And it really shouldn't be that much different at a household level. We should be helping our neighbors out and them helping us as well. So if you're not prepared for yourself, do it for your family, do it for your pets, and do it for the first responders, because you're going to take a lot of the pressure off of them. First responders are going to be very busy in an emergency situation, and it's going to make a big difference for them if you're prepared and can take care of yourself for at least those first few hours. So I wanted to wrap up my presentation with just a quick couple of fun ways you can get prepared. So the first one is Survive the Night Family Challenge. Test your kit. You've made a kit. Now, before you go stash it, actually test it and see if it's going to work for you. So it might be better to do this during the summer months. Come up with a disaster scenario. Maybe it's a power outage or whatever, and see if you can survive off the items in your kit. So yeah, maybe better to do during the summer months to practice it, and then make sure you're prepared for the winter months in case there's an extended duration, and you can augment your kit as needed after you've tested it out. The second one is a disaster cook-off. So this is if you're tired of making supper, let the kids cook for a change. They can do it. There's lots of disaster type recipes online that require no cooking at all. You can make them with non-perishable goods. you might have to have a little bit more of adventurous taste buds, but a fun way to practice and be prepared for emergencies. Take a course together, learn something new. I haven't taken pet first aid, but we have pets, and I think it's something that would be really fun and educational for myself and my kids to take. And the last one there is, I challenge you to talk to at least one neighbor and see how you can help each other in an emergency. And lastly, I put together just a quick little how prepared are you quiz, and I'll just provide this to Neil and the city afterwards. The points are mostly for fun, but just to give yourself a quick little assessment of where you're at in the emergency preparedness phase. So that is all I have for you, but I thank you so much for your time.
Well, Anne, we thank you so much. This was very informative and, as expected, a lot of fun. I'm wondering, Kathy, I see you're still online. Do you have any comments or questions for Anne?
Anne, great presentation. I like that you added in, not just about evacuation, but shelter in place is something that we often get here too. And it's about listening and staying in touch with the neighbors and with the radios. And good job. That I learned some new stuff too.
Good, that's great. Thanks, Kathy.
All right. Well, I think we pretty much used up our hour, and I'd like to thank everyone who's tuning in to listen, and please encourage everyone, all your neighbors, go talk to them, to tune in and check out this recording that'll be available for the next couple of weeks. And Kathy and Anne, thank you so much for your time, and thanks everyone for being prepared. As Anne said, your emergency responders so very much appreciate it when people are prepared. I can say it does indeed take the pressure off of us and makes your life easier too. So thank you everyone, and good night.
Wonderful. Thank you.